rejection. We all kind of hate that. We hate to feel unwanted. We hate to feel not wanting to be picked for something like the school team or the play or whatever. We hate to not be invited somewhere. All of those things feel like we're being rejected. We all have felt it. And yet you would think that when God chose a new disciple after Judas, there was a choice between two men, and the guy who God didn't pick, you'd think he would feel rejection, but he actually didn't, because he had a different perspective, a perspective that we all need, and it's this: God has a different place for me. God has a different plan for me. God's hand is in it all. Join us today as we continue in the book of Acts and talk about rejection. And I'm going to, in this session, interview one of our sons. I'll interview him for a few minutes because he wants to share his story of rejection when his wife left him and what he did about it. So join us today. All right, my sister sent me something. It was really funny. Did you know that Darth Vader has a wife? And she's very, very rarely photographed. So here's a picture of her. Darth Vader's rarely photographed wife, Ella. Elevator. I don't know why I thought that was so funny. Like, she sent that to me, and I'm like, okay, I gotta pass this on to you guys. Thankfully, you have my same sense of humor. Oh my gosh. Okay. Today's going to be crazy. We're going to talk a lot about rejection. I am going to go on a psychomaniac rant after that, so just plan for that. I'm going to do an interview. We've got so much stuff to cover. How's that? So let's just start right from the beginning and let's get caught up. So this is where we are in Acts right now. Jesus has died on the cross. Now, it is Passover in Jerusalem. Jesus has died on the cross. He's been buried. He rose from the dead. He was on this earth for 40 days as he was imparting everything he needed to impart to his disciples so that when he left, they would know what to do, any questions they had. So you see him ascending after 40 days. Then there's 10 days before this day of Pentecost. Now, next week, we're going to talk about what that looks like because Pentecost is an actual Jewish holiday. And so we want to talk about what that means and all of that kind of all of that. So right now, where we are at, we are in the middle of this 10-day period. Jesus has ascended, the disciples are there, and that's where we're at. Now, he left us with a job, and our job is to go into all the world to share Jesus with other people. He's the only way. He's the only one that can take away our sins. He's the only one that can give us a relationship with God. And so that's the disciples' job, to go out into the world and share that. And by the way, that's kind of our job too. Now, we kind of are in this considered army of the Lord. And I thought this was really, really cute. A pastor said to his friend, "You need to join the army of the Lord." And he said, "Well, I'm already in the army of the Lord." And the pastor said, "Well, I'm confused because you only go to church on Christmas and Easter." And he whispered back and said, "Well, that's because I'm in the Secret Service." I thought that was really cute. I don't know. I know it's getting towards May. The jokes are kind of getting leaner and leaner, so oh well. Anyway, so where they are is they're in this place now where they have to go to Jerusalem and they have to wait for the Holy Spirit to come. Now, it's been 10 days. They have no idea how long they have to wait. And while they were praying, what they were doing last week is that they had to pick a brand new disciple. Or apostle, because they had 12, and now that Judas, betrayed Jesus and then he killed himself, and now there's 11. And so the question we have to ask is, why in the world do you have to have 12? So here's a verse for you, Matthew 19:28. "I assure you that when the world is made new and the Son of Man sits upon the glorious throne, you who have been my followers will also sit on 12 thrones judging the 12 tribes of Israel." So 12 is the number, but remember, now there's only 11. So the apostles had to last week come up with a new apostle. Now, the apostles were very, very, very important to the early church. They were like the foundation of this whole thing that you and I read about in Acts. Now, if you were going to be an apostle back then, your resume had to look like this. You had to have followed Jesus since the very, very beginning when he started his ministry. You had to be an eyewitness to the resurrection. You had to be able to say, I saw him die, I saw him rise from the dead, I saw him after. And you had to see him in those 40 days before he ascended into heaven. Now, 2 reasons why you had to have that kind of a resume is that these men were going to have to speak with utter authority. And that was their job, because what their authority would pass to someone else, who would pass it to someone else. And then 2,000 years later, we get to read it in the Bible. Now, the reason for that is because if Peter went and said, hey, Jesus said, and someone said, whoa, 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 how do you know Jesus said that? Well, I was there. Jesus rose from the dead. Whoa, 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 how do you know that? I was there. Jesus spent time with us after he rose from the dead. Yeah, right. No, trust me, I was there. And so what they had to say was really, really, really important. And so being apostle was a big deal. They also knew that this resume, they had to have it because they would be highly, highly persecuted. 11 of these apostles would be martyred for their faith, which means their heads were either chopped off or they were hung on a cross. Peter supposedly was hung on a cross upside down. Imagine how horrifying that was. But these guys had to have seen Jesus and seen the resurrection, because if they didn't spend that time with him, they might have run away or given or changed their story under that kind of persecution. So what I want to do today is take a story that we went with last week, but I want to go a completely different way on that. Go back to Acts 1:23. I would say check in your handout. You don't have one, so look up on the screen. And they accordingly proposed or nominated 2 men, Joseph called Barsabbas, who was surnamed Justus, and Matthias. Then they prayed, Lord, you know everyone's heart. Show us which of these 2 you have chosen to take over the apostolic ministry, which Judas left to go where he belongs. Then they cast lots, and the lot fell to Matthias, so he was added to the 11 apostles. 2 guys, 1 gets the job. Now, last week we talked about how they did this was casting lots. And we say that's kind of like flipping a coin, which of course we don't do now because we have the Holy Spirit. But it was so funny this weekend, Rob and I were, this deal he's putting together, like he thinks we should do it this one way and I think we should do it another way. And so I said, hey, we just read about casting lots. Let's flip a coin. Your heads, I'm tails. It goes my way if I get tails. Flip the coin, it was tails. Yes. Okay, but here's the problem with that. I felt sorry for him because I'm like, yeah, I'm not really sure that was God. So we'll do 3 out of 5. You know how we did that last week? Okay. Neither one of us won that. So that's why Jesus says, nope, we don't do that way anymore. But here's the deal. Matthias got the job. I want you to imagine if you were there and you were one of the 2. And they picked the other girl instead of you. How would you feel? Would you feel like, I'm just not good enough, and I'm just not spiritual enough, and you know, it's just not fair. God just really likes Matthias more than he likes me. And see, I think what happens is when something happens like that, we start feeling rejection. And a lot of you get that. You know exactly how it feels. You were rejected at 4, your dad left you. You didn't get that promotion, but someone else did. Your boyfriend finds someone he likes better. Your husband decides he wants a younger wife. And so this whole idea of rejection, I'm overlooked, I'm not good enough, just completely sets in. I'm going to tell you my little story about my rejection in my life. It's really stupid compared to most people's rejection, but at this time in my life, it was very bad. Here's my deal. When I was in high school, all I ever wanted to do was to be a pom-pom girl. Okay? Yep. Pretty sure you've heard this story before, but I brought props this time to show you how important this was to me, okay? So, we started at Greenway High School, and in Greenway, it was a freshman and sophomore year. It was a brand new high school, so there was not that many kids. So how hard would it be to make the top 12 dancing girls in Greenway at this point? Freshmen and sophomores, not even juniors and seniors are there. So I'm trying out. And I thought it was pretty good, so whatever. Anyway, apparently I got a little cocky, and they said, you need to make up a 2-minute dance. And so I said, oh, I don't really want to make it up and memorize it. I'm just going to wing it. And I'm just going to dance my little heart away in there. Unfortunately, it was about 1 minute and 40 seconds, okay, which kind of, so that night when they put the roster up, guess who did not make it? That would be me, okay. Now, as dumb as that sounds, I felt completely rejected. I was so heartbroken, like all I wanted to do was be a bomb girl. How hard is that, God, really? Okay, so there we go. Now, year 2, my sophomore year, I decided that I would try out again. By this time, I know all the pom-pom girls. I know all the teachers who are going to be judges. Like, I'm kind of a shoo-in because we just know I'm going to make the pom squad. Now, we were so sure of it that this is how they did it back then. they came and kidnapped you. So if you made the team, they would drive by, jump out with balloons or whatever, knock on the door, yay, you made it. We were so sure I was going to make it that one of the other pom-pom girls that actually was a pom-pom girl spent the night at my house. We just thought we'd alleviate one extra stop for them, okay? The problem is that when they came to the door, my poor sweet mother answered it and they said, Lori made the team and Lisa didn't. I know, you should feel sorry for me. I was hoping you'd say, aw, thank you, okay? Yeah, it was kind of a sad thing. It was really sad, but okay, there you go. So, junior year, woo! Get a load of my picture. Okay, isn't that terrifying? Serious. I told David when I sent that to him, I said, do not even think of laughing at this picture, okay? A couple things I noticed. Hey, what was the hair, honestly? And not only that, I had a waist back then. I'm like, wow, I didn't even have to have Spanx to get a waist. So yeah, that's kind of sad. But by junior year, I made the team. Now, when you make a team, yeah, thank you very much. When you make a team, when you have pom-poms in your hand, the really cool part about this is that, when you do this, you have 24 palms doing this, and when you do this. Okay, so you are going to see the very last dance I ever do in my life. I'm going to make you watch this for 18 seconds, okay? And I'm going to show you what happened. We're in Prescott. First time I ever dance in my life, in the middle of this football field. Terrified. All right, David, let's go. Maybe. This is so awkward, I can't even tell you. Okay, wait a second. Hang on, you're supposed to smile. That's what happened. That is what happened to me. And I'm like standing there, and I'm like, and I didn't know what to do. It was horrible. Oh my gosh. Okay, so look, when I ordered these in, look what they do now. And I think it's because of me. They put these on here. So now you can do that. So if I tried, it wouldn't come off. I think I'm the reason they did that, okay? I did something wonderful for the pom squad. So anyway, that was my most embarrassing moment. I thought it was until I remembered my most embarrassing moment, which I told you before. A football player asked me for a pencil. Do you remember this? And I'm walking into class, and I reach into my purse, and instead of pulling out a pencil, I pull out a tampon, okay? A wooden carved tampon, really thin one. And I put it in my hand to hand it to him, and he's like, yeah, okay, whoop, that's my life. The more I thought about it, I thought I had a horrible childhood. All right. Whew. All right, here's the deal. When we get, you can take that picture down, David. That is terrifying. I just had to prove to you that I really made it. Here's the deal. When we get rejected, the problem, serious, David. Okay, when we get rejected, this is how the world looks at it. The world looks at it completely different than God looks at it. The world looks at it like you're a failure, you're just not smart enough, you're not talented enough, you're not good enough, you don't make enough money, like whatever it is, and you feel rejected. But here's what I want you to know as a follower of Jesus. Nothing could be farther from the truth. Now for Barsabbas, I want you to think about his life. This was not 12 people picking a pom-pom squad. This was the God of the universe making a choice between two people, and it wasn't him. And I wonder how he felt about it, but here's what the deal is. I think he was fine about it. Somehow he went on in his life following Jesus. It didn't even faze him. And church history has it that he actually died a martyr many, many, many years later for Jesus. And so when God said no to Barabbas, here's what we did not see. I need to go into therapy. I need to go take his counselor. I've been so rejected. Like, he didn't do any of that. And somehow I think that's kind of a lesson for us. Now, I'm not against counseling, and so don't hear me with that. But what I'm saying is that what we see in this story is that he pressed forward. He said, nothing's going to stop me. If God doesn't want me to be an apostle, he clearly has a really, really good reason for that. And so the world says you're a failure. God says, no. I just am moving you. I want you at a different place. And sometimes he uses rejection as the avenue to get you to that place. Now, I thought about boxes. Here's our picture of lots of boxes. I don't know what made me think about this. I was thinking about Amazon's shipping center. I can't even imagine what that looks like. I want you to pretend that you are a box. And inside of your box is your story, something that you have to tell other people about your life. And I want you to think that every one of those boxes gets put on a conveyor belt and sent somewhere all over the world. And I want you to know that God has taken you and your story, and he's put you in the state you are, in the neighborhood you are, and the golf club where you are, and the football team where you are, whatever it is, he's conveyor belted you there because he wants to use you in that specific place. Look at John 17:18. Just as you sent me, Jesus is saying to the Father, into the world, I have sent them into the world. See, you and I have a job to go out, whatever it is, whether you're in the fashion industry or the printing industry or the whatever industry, your job is to be a light in that particular area where God needs us. And so rejection doesn't mean failure. Most of the time, it just means God is rerouting you, putting you on another conveyor belt, and sending you someplace completely different. It's not about rejection. The world says you're rejected. God says, no, 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 I'm moving you. Now, here's what I want to say about my little pom-pom thing. I do not believe that I would be standing up here doing this if I would have made the Pom Squad my freshman and sophomore year. And the reason for it is because it was such a young school. Campus Crusade for Christ came on that campus. And I was able to get involved in Bible studies and pour my life into the things of God to learn and grow so that when I did make it as a junior, hopefully I could have some kind of influence over other people at that time. So I look back at those 2 years and say, God, what seemed like rejection at that time was actually not rejection at all. It was just me moving to a different place so God could use me eventually better. Now, just like Barsabbas, he needs us different places. So I started thinking about all of our guest speakers that we've had over these few years. All of these people probably prayed, dear Jesus, please, please, please help me to have a nice life. Please help nothing to go wrong. Please help me just to bless me. Everything's fine. And God says, you know what? No. Okay? And they're going to feel rejected by God. Like, God, that's just not fair. Everyone else has everything and I don't, and that's just not right. So I started thinking about this idea of boxes, and I realized that, like Carol Kent, she walks along with her husband one day and says, I love our life. Our son's in the Navy. He just got married. We have 2 new grandchildren. So excited about this. And 3 or 4 weeks later, she gets a phone call in the middle of the night because her son murdered his new wife's ex-husband. And now what happens is Carol Kent's super happy life, her box just got put onto a conveyor belt and sent into the prison ministries. Jennifer Rothschild, who could be cuter and sweeter than Jennifer? Oh my gosh. At 16, this beautiful girl became blind. And God took her life and put her little box in a conveyor belt to tell all the world that life is okay with Jesus, even if it doesn't seem fair. We have Gracia Burnham, who was kidnapped as a missionary. A missionary. She's serving God in the Philippines. And we see her and we're just like, oh my gosh, you're so awesome. But you know what God did? He put her conveyor belt and stuck her in the Philippine jungles after being kidnapped by terrorists for an entire year. And she tells her whole story of how she spent that year. The last day when she was rescued, her husband in the crossfire of gunfire was killed right in front of her eyes. And you're like, God, what is that all about? And if I were her, I'd feel very rejected by God. I spent a year with terrorists. I lost my husband. What's going on? But instead, she took her story and let God put it on a conveyor belt and take her to share with you and I into this world that, you know what, we can make it through anything. And that's good news for us. Saeed Abedini, God sent his little box to Iran, stuck in an Iranian prison for 3.5 years. And now he's here to tell us that, you know what, you can make it through anything, any kind of persecution. If he can make it through an Iranian prison, persecuted for 3.5 years, you can make it too. He's using his story to help other people. Kristen Taylor, deathly ill child, been in the hospital probably more in the last 5 years than she's been out. And God says, you know what, I'm going to send your box into the hospitals. And you're going to be a light to the nurses and the doctors and the patients and all of these people. And I want you to know that you can still suffer physically and still love Jesus. We look at Kristen Anderson, who pretty much hated her life, decided one day she was just going to end it all. So she walked out onto some train tracks and laid down and said, I'm done with life. And she waited for the train to run her over, which it did, which should, in most options, kill her immediately, but God graciously put his hand over her and saved her. Both legs were cut off, but she's here now to tell a valuable story in her box to people that, you know what, suicide is not the answer. Next week we'll have Beth Nemo here, and she will tell us how awful it would be to lose a child. You send them off to high school, and you get a phone call that says your daughter has just been murdered by a fellow student. I can't even imagine what that would even be like. So that's what happens when you feel rejected by God or you feel rejected by a person. Instead of looking at it negatively, like, oh, everyone hates me and it's not fair, God hates me. No, you hold your head up and you say, you know what? I don't like where I'm going, but I'll tell you what, God is doing something. Every one of these people, and you and I, have that choice to take our boxes and do something with it or do something destructive. So, I am going to introduce you to my adorable son, Sean, okay? He is going to come up. I asked him the other day if he would come up and actually, I said, can I share your story? And then I thought, you know, I'll let him share his own story. So he is going to come up. This is Sean. He is, hi. He is my adorable.
My blood pressure is like.
Your blood pressure's high?
Oh my gosh, it's probably outrageous right now.
Through. So you don't want to come and do our announcements each week?
You look so pretty.
Oh, hon.
You do. Jeez.
Oh, what a cute son. He just wants me to take him to lunch afterwards. Oh, can you go to lunch afterwards? Okay, so I wanted him to come and tell you his story about rejection because you had kind of a tough last few years, so have at it.
Yeah, I was married for 9 years. I got married when I was 23. And about, it was 2 years ago, a little bit over 2 years ago, my life came totally crashing down. My wife came to me one day. We were separated for a while. I moved back into the house, and she came to me one day and she said, I can't do this anymore. I thought she meant like, can't eat dinner or something. But she said, I'm out of here. And she walked out the door, and I remember that moment as like devastated. And you talked about rejection, and what was rejecting about it was my biggest fear in life is someone not loving me. And when the person you love the most tells you that they don't love you anymore is pretty hurtful. So.
And she had, and I think what even makes it harder for you probably is because you stood by her. She wanted to become a doctor, and so this whole time she was going to school to become a doctor and do all of these kind of things, which is awesome. And then in the meantime, you ended up not working for our company any longer, and you started working. So you have this whole thing of now your whole life is changing because you now have a new job. So how did, in your rejection part, not only with her, how did you feel? Did you feel like, I don't make enough money. Are things that you didn't feel like, what part was felt rejected?
Yeah, so my ex was, she was going to school to be a doctor, and so she was in school, and I worked, and I took care of her while she was going through all that. Then she became a doctor, and she became this great, successful doctor. I had left the company and wanted to do some other things, and I remember I was on a commission-only structure, so I wasn't making any money at all. But it was that time where I wanted to do something, and I wanted to have a shot at trying something new. And it was only about a year or two when she was making really good money, and I wasn't making any money at all, that she was like, well, wait, this is mine, and
right.
You're not good enough, and peace out. So.
Right. So you can feel the rejection of that whole thing. Now, let's talk about what you did with your rejection to give your mother gray hair. This is why I have to color my hair, okay?
So I had divorced, I had moved out. Actually, interesting, I was married for 9 years, exactly 9 years. The judge signed our divorce papers on our 9th anniversary, which is kind of, the odds that's
that's
1 in 365, I think the math. So I had deeply gotten into just some bad stuff. I got way into prescription painkillers.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Way into prescription painkillers. I just didn't care. I didn't care about anyone. I didn't care about really living.
Yeah. And see, I think that's what rejection does. I think when you feel so rejected and you feel like nobody wants me, nobody loves me, I think that's a step that you can take. You can go to drugs, you can go to alcohol, you can go to pornography, you can go whatever it is that you want to go to kind of just numb that pain. And yet that's what I want to show you is that with Barsabbas, he didn't do that. He just put God in the equation. Now, the coolest thing is you talked to a pastor, and he said the coolest thing to you. What did he say?
Yeah, I met with a gentleman named Rustin Rossello. He's a pastor out of Scottsdale Bible. And I sat down with him, and I was not in a good place. And he knew it by looking at me. And he said, Sean, you have two choices. He goes, you will be dead soon, or you can take a path that you can make some changes in your life. And God is big. He'll do great things for you. And you're either going to be dead, or you're going to be sitting across from someone a year from now sharing the same exact story that I'm sharing with you.
And what happened since then?
It was a couple months after that. I was still making bad decisions, and I woke up one day, and I remember just being in bed, and I remember thinking,
my mother wants to beat me to death?
Yes.
Okay, that was probably what he thought.
But I remember thinking my ex had gotten the best of me. And at that moment, my younger brother Mike had called me, and I said, I'm done, man. I can't do this anymore. I'm hurt, and I don't know what to do. And so when I was on the prescription meds, if some of you know, you can get really sick just by stopping taking them. So I went to a detox center for about 5 days, safely, medically, got off of everything, and haven't taken anything since.
And then what happened just recently?
Yeah. I met the best thing that's ever happened to me in my life.
Stand up, Miss Trish. This is my new daughter-in-law. I think we have a picture of their wedding up there too. I don't know, David, if you want. There you go. There they are. And then now, what else do you do? What he did is he took his whole crazy life, and then he started going to church, and he started giving, and he started like giving away his life. And now you teach a small group.
God is good. Yeah.
That's awesome. So see, there you go. One road, two roads. Anytime you're rejected, those are your options. So, honey, thank you for doing this. You are the best. I'll even take you out to lunch for that nice comment that you said. So there you go. When you are rejected, you have one of two choices. You can be mad at God, you can be mad at the person that ruined your life, you can just go on, or you can be like Barsabbas and look at God and say, you know what, God, I'm just going to believe that you are behind this and you're doing something different with my life. Isn't that a great way to live? 2,000 years later, you and I get to see Barsabbas' story. And 2,000 years later, it helps us to deal with rejection because he didn't fall apart when God chose somebody over him. Because God said, you know what, Barsabbas, I don't want you to be an apostle. That's not a good place for you. But I'll tell you what, I want you to go to another country. I want you to take the gospel there. And I believe that's exactly what he did. So what if you could look at life like this? Wouldn't it be the greatest way to live? Like if you actually came home one day and you said, yeah, I was up for this promotion and someone else got it, but you know what? It's okay. God's doing something different. I'm not going to be sad about it. What if your husband comes home just like what happened with Sean and his ex, or wife? I don't love you anymore. What if you, instead of falling apart and destructing, just saying, all right, God, this is horrible and it sucks and I get all that, but you know what, God, somehow I'm going to trust that you are involved in the midst of this. Now, a lot of women, your husbands could have left for this reason. I literally laughed at this. Now, I have no idea if you will or not. A wife and her husband went to a painting exhibition. And they walked into this new exhibition, and right in the front, there was a painting of a woman, and all she had was leaves across her chest. And so the man stood there and looked at this painting, and the wife just went and looked at the whole exhibition and came back around, and he was still like staring at it. And she looked at him and she goes, are you going to come home with me? Or are you going to stay there staring, waiting for the wind to blow? I don't know why I thought that was so cute. I could just picture that, like the wind to blow. Okay, anyway, so that might be why your husband left, because he was just a nut like that. Some of you pray for the guy to marry you and you're so excited and then he dumps you and then you're devastated. And what if you could just walk away saying, you know what, God, I have just really been protected. I laugh at this because most of our kids, whenever they dated someone and then they broke up with them or they broke up with them or however that worked, I always was like, oh, that's so awesome. And they'd be crying and carrying on. When I'm saying this, I'm saying mostly Cheyenne, okay? And so she was talking to me. She was talking to a friend at church the other day, and I happened to be standing there. And she goes, "You know what's wrong with my mom? Like, here's what happens. I call her. I'm crying. I'm sad. I'm just like," she goes, "I want my mom to do two things. I want her to feel sorry for me. I want her to cry with me. But nope. Here's what my mom says. You know, Cheyenne, God's got this. He's got it. You're fine. Don't worry about it. He's got a plan. He's got a purpose. Blah blah blah." She goes, "I hate that when she does that." But I told her, I said, "Cheyenne, I have 30 years on you, okay? I can look back in that hideous pom-pom picture and think of boys that I dated back then, which looking at that picture, I have no idea how anyone ever wanted to date me, okay? But it's like I look at, and then they would break up and I would be like so sad. But I told her, I said, "Cheyenne, I can look back and say, God, you have saved me in the most incredible way." So I think if we can look at things like that and look and say, God, I know you are in this. I want us to look at rejection with God glasses on. I want us, when we look at our life, just to see everything that happens through his eyes, not the world's eyes. Because remember, the world is going to tell you something completely different. Okay, I hope that lesson was very encouraging to you. We just kind of need a new perspective when it comes to rejection, a new way to look at things, knowing that God always has a purpose. And when we can stand on that, we can live a joyful life no matter if we're rejected or not. Have a good day.